Good evening and welcome everyone. I am Dr. Rosina Haskins, Director of Equity Advancement for the West Hartford Public Schools. We are so glad that you have joined this live virtual discussion. If you are one of the 215 registrants or watching the recording of this webinar at a time that works for you. I am so honored to share this virtual space with such a wonderful panel of guests and parent partners. They bring individual skills, diverse experiences, and perspectives. Collectively, they are a dynamic source of wisdom, hope, and compassion, as you will see this evening. I will ask each of the panelists to give a wave when I introduce them so that everyone can situate their names, titles, and faces before we dive into this evening's enlightening discussion. So from our school district, we have Melanie Thomas, Department Supervisor of School Counseling. Melanie is new to West Hartford, but a veteran in the field. Student Natalie Gavalis, grade 12 student at Conard High School and co-president of the Heron Project Club. Say hello, Natalie. Derek Williams, grade 11 student at Hall and student leader of last summer's Champions Conference. Give a wave, Derek. Now, among our community partners, we have Janelli Oliveira, community therapist at the Bridge Family Center. We have Jeffrey Ambroise, counselor and clinical director of Courage Counseling Center, LLC. And we have Dr. Richard Zhang with us this evening, resident of psychiatry at UConn Health. So please, from wherever you are at this moment, send them warm vibes. And now it is my pleasure to turn things over to our super moderators and parent partners, Rebecca Seaton and Gigi Bellin, members of the Community of Concern, a group of middle and high school parents working to raise awareness and support adolescent mental health and wellness. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Rosina. I want to take a moment to say how grateful we are to you for helping put this program together with us, on top of all that you've been doing to support students and families for this new year. I am Rebecca Seaton, and I have 3 teenagers at Conard High School. My family has managed stress these days from doing pretty well to really struggling. And I know tonight I'm going to get a lot out of this discussion. I hope you do too. And I just want to thank the folks who sent in questions ahead of time. We did our best to integrate them into the program. If you have a question as our talk goes on tonight, please put it in the question and answer section at the bottom, and we'll try to get to questions as best we can. Gigi.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hi, everyone, and welcome this evening. My name is Gigi Belen, and I am the parent to 4 children, 1 now at Conard, another just starting at Sedgwick, and 2 more still at Rayburn. I am a child of immigrants from the Philippines, and growing up, my parents didn't talk about or didn't know to prioritize mental health. And maybe they didn't have that capacity since they were focused more on surviving versus thriving. So now as a parent myself, I have been trying to model self-care and the importance of mental wellness. So I'm really excited for tonight's diverse panel of experts because growing up, I think one of the barriers to accessing this info was that I didn't see people who looked like me working in this field or even talking about mental wellness. So at the end of the last school year, we had high hopes for the possibility that we would have more normalcy back this upcoming school year as kids transition back. With the COVID variant, we have more uncertainty about what will happen this year. Some kids may feel stressed from going from remote learning last year to in person, and others are dealing with the transition to a new school. Some of us and our kids also deal with stress from experiencing or worrying about harassment and discrimination based on race, culture, gender, sexuality, and ability. We grown-ups need to study ourselves to be available for our kids. So our first question this evening is for Janelli. Janelli, what is mental health and wellness exactly, and why should we as parents and caregivers pay attention to our mental health and wellness? And what are some ways that we can do that?
So there's so much that I can say about mental health and wellness, but because of our time, I'm going to try and give us a nice, concise answer. Basically, mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. All of these aspects determines how we handle stress, relate to others, and how we make our choices. Mental health wellness is having a positive state of mind. That means being able to think positively and act positively in different situations. Now, this has been really hard for a lot of us since COVID. We've been isolated, haven't been able to work on our social well-being, our emotional and psychological self. If you've noticed, some things to notice about yourself, is there a dip in positive emotions? Are you not working on the hobbies that you were enjoying previously? This is a great way to start paying attention to self-care. And as parents and caregivers, it's important to model self-care for your children and other family members. Now, self-care can look like taking long walks or baths, turning off the electronics once a night, spending time with your family, but it also includes being kind to yourself when you're experiencing negative emotions. It's okay to feel anxious. It's okay to feel sad. We haven't been around our family members. Allow yourself to feel these emotions, because if you don't allow yourself to feel them, they're going to come up later on in life, and you might take them out in a different way. It's okay to ask for help. Look for your own therapy or family therapy. And, there's a lot of stigma that comes along with it, but hopefully at the end of this panel, we can ease some resiliency to seeking help. And hopefully, we have some answers, like we can answer any questions in regards to how to find help for yourself.
Thank you. That's great. Did anyone else have any other panelists want to chime in with their thoughts?
I'll add something to that, Gigi. What I was thinking about was a question that we got from someone about how they like to plan, and it's really hard with all of this uncertainty to do a lot of planning right now, because that can make you feel better when you've planned things out. And I got some advice listening to a podcast about how it's really important, she thought, to really take things a week at a time, as much as you can. Just think through a week, do I have what I need for the week? Does my kid have what they need for the week? And what we've been doing as a family is on Sunday evenings, we have like a dinner meeting and we go through the week. And it sort of helps, I think, kind of get everybody sort of situated in terms of, okay, here's how this is going to go. Now, you have to plan ahead for certain things, but for instance, holidays and things like that, that's kind of far enough away that it's good to just sort of try to focus more on what's right in front of us. So that was advice I thought was helpful. So I'm going to turn our attention to the kids and how they're doing. Adolescence can be a rocky phase, in addition to the stress of going to school during a pandemic. We may think we know what our kids need, but we need to hear from them. Tonight, we have 2 high school students here to tell us about what's been going on for them. So I'm just going to start with Derek. Derek, you did remote learning all last year. What was that like for you, and how was the transition to in-person school been like?
Thank you. For one big thing, I'm a very social person, so just transitioning into regular schooling and going back into remote, it was definitely a challenge. I had to kind of think about what my main resources were, and every single thing was just online. I think one thing relating back to friendships, oh my gosh, I I was still in touch with everybody, but it was just in a different way. And I realized how much I lost a lot of social skills. One social skill that I definitely had lost conscious of was definitely just being assertive and helping, find myself and also finding how I should take care of myself. And whether to say yes or no to certain things, whether it's hanging out or whether it's just, doing something for somebody and going out of my way. But other than that, it hasn't been too drastic of a change. But now that I'm going back into in-person school this year, it's just been, I've noticed how much I've missed last year. And just seeing everybody's faces and things of that sort has definitely helped. But other than that, it was quite the change.
Thank you for sharing that, Derek. Natalie, you are a senior planning your life after high school, and it's a time of uncertainty, so it's challenging to do that. What's been on your mind as you've started back to school this year?
So the unknown that we're dealing with each day, especially as students, can really be a lot. Going into our third school year, being significantly impacted by COVID, the weight can kind of build on itself. I'm seeing that in myself and the students around me. Balancing, your student life, your academics, your homework, as well as planning your post-secondary plans. So whether it be college or pursuing another opportunity, and then also remembering to make sure your social life, your social well-being on top of all of these things, it can be a very delicate balance. But for me, it's really highlighted the importance of being able to take a step back and realize maybe you need to take a walk, be in nature for a little bit, or maybe it's taking a moment to journal or listen to a song or something. That skill has been something that I really relied on and has significantly helped me through this, the challenge of these times. And I think it's really important to understand that giving your best effort every day, it might look a little different. Some days your best effort might be up here. Other days it might be a little different, look different. And so understanding that mental health, especially in these times, is not a linear journey, nor is it constant, has been something that I've found comfort in.
Thank you. Derek, you participated in a Champions Conference this summer and did a project about mental health. Can you tell us about that and what did you gain from it?
The conference I did this year, a little heads up to Ms. Rosina Haskins for recommending me to it. It was a group of high school teens of my age, and we all came together and we were split into different groups to create a presentation for something like a real life example of something. And my group scenario was mental health stigmas and how we had to come up with a scenario to how to make people of different genders, of different races, of different sexual orientations, and how we could make them feel inclusive and also at the same time positively impact the community. And my group came up with this. It's not necessarily a real one, although I would love to imply it later on, is like a clinic, which we made the scenario of having people come in who don't know much about other people's backgrounds or cultures or certain cultures and backgrounds and kind of, teach on that. But I've just gained so much from that because it just reminded me how beautiful our differences are and just how different we are as people and, what makes society so great. And that's just the diversity and the beauty with all of that. And it's really helped me to gain a sense of knowledge with even in this time of social justice and in this time of uncertainty with COVID and just, helping us get back to somewhat of reality.
Thank you, Derek. I can see why you did such a good job with that project and had a great achievement around that. I know. That's wonderful. Natalie, you co-founded and are co-leading a club to support teens and mental health called the Heron Project Club. Why did you start this club and what are your plans for this year?
I had first heard about this club after watching Chris Heron's ESPN 30 for 30 documentary surrounding his journey through mental health and also substance abuse. And I just was struck by the honesty and rawness in which he approached the subject, especially of mental health and mental health concerns. And when I was later the following year, when I was presented with the opportunity to be in the leadership of a Conard chapter of Chris Herron's national organization focused on supporting others going through similar things, they're called the Herron Project Club, I was really excited to be a part of it. And through our personal club at Conard, through activities and community involvement, we are creating an environment which is focused on breaking the stigma surrounding mental health and seeking support.
Thank you, both of you. It's such wonderful work that you're doing. We are so lucky to have student leaders like you in our community, in our schools, helping everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. I think, did you mention that maybe the Herron Project Club would be in other schools as well, or whether you were talking to younger students? Because I feel like sometimes, especially for kids in the middle school, I think they get so much more from hearing from older high school students sometimes than they do from especially from parents like me, but from other adults in their lives. Like, it just, their word matters so much more.
Yeah, that's a great point, and something that we're really committed to working on this year. Now that things are slightly more stable given the COVID restrictions, we're working with Hall High School and Sedgwick Middle School within the district. They both had expressed interest in starting their own chapters. And so that's one of the things that I and my co-president are working on bringing to other schools in the district this year.
That's great. I'm really excited to hear more about that. And I had seen the documentary in the spring, so I just know how valuable the work that the Herron Project Club has been doing too. So thank you. So turning now to our clinicians to help us figure out how we can support our kids. There are just so many things that parents worry about. So in figuring out where to focus, what should we as parents and caregivers keep in mind to foster and support our kids' mental wellness? And I'm going to direct this first question actually to Richard.
Absolutely. There are several lifestyle factors that parents and caregivers can try to promote when caring for the mental wellness of their kids. Some of these lifestyle factors include things like regular and sufficient sleep, physical activity, and good diet. The most important of these factors would be sleep. Most teenagers actually function best and are mentally healthier when they get between 9 and 9.5 hours of sleep per night. Even when this target range of sleep is not achieved, which often is the case, unfortunately, it's still important nonetheless to strive towards sufficient sleep in teenagers in order to achieve better wellness. Also important is physical activity, which can consist of something as simple as a 20-minute walk per day, ideally more. And another thing that's conducive towards mental wellness is good diet. Ideally, if possible, kids and teenagers should be getting 3 meals a day, including breakfast. And the diet should be balanced as well, if possible. And so these 3 factors, sleep, exercise, and diet, are things that many parents can have a reasonable amount of influence over and help control in order to help their kids have better wellness. I would also like to add, in addition to these lifestyle factors, that it's also crucial for wellness that parents encourage their kids to explore their interests. And so kids and teenagers should be encouraged to balance academic achievement with fun, which can be socializing with peers or exploring other hobbies. And as we know, everyone needs to recharge at some point, and kids and teenagers are no exception.
Thank you, Richard. I wanted to take a brief moment to open it up to other panelists to see if they had anything else to add about what we as parents and caregivers can keep in mind around our children's mental wellness, if we had something to add.
Definitely one recommendation that I have, just coming from a personal source, some kids and students may get mad at me, is to limit our screen time. I feel like that's really important, especially with the negativity that social media could bring on a certain basis. And really what I mean by that is that we look at social media and we see like what celebrities are doing and what other people are doing. And then sometimes we just see other people traveling when, we may be at home just not doing anything. And I mean, the big thing with that is comparison to other people. And just one thing that I want to point out is that sometimes that we have to understand that we're not going to have absolutely everything that everyone else has, and that's okay. Because sometimes you have to look at it and say, hey, like, what if I had this and that? What if that's not meant for me? You know what I mean? So really, we have to come up with we have to make ourselves feel better in a way by letting ourselves know that, we will get to where we get to on time, and that sometimes everything may not work out to how we want it to be, but we just have to know that it's working for our good and that it's really maturing us in a way by how we respond to, what we get and what we don't. And I think, just social media influences us. It can influence us in a positive way, but if we're on it for too long and when it takes away our focus from school and from doing the things that we need to do, it can become a negative factor in our lives.
Thank you so much for that, Derek. I feel like that is sound advice also for some of my own peers and other adults in my own life. So I appreciate hearing that perspective, especially from a student. So Jeffrey, I wanted to ask, there's a lot of pressure for adolescents when it comes to academics and extracurriculars in our school district and community. How can we, as parents, keep the pace and pressure from being too much given all the stressors that adolescents are dealing with?
Great question. So the opposite of balance to me is amazing time management skills and balance. Like, so if you want to alleviate some of that pressure, it's a combination of how do we get our students and children to work smarter and not harder. This is something even adults struggle with, and including myself at times. And I think it warrants a conversation with your child to just sit down and ask them, is your schedule, enough to fit in a 24-hour workday? So I would typically recommend an activity just to create a daily overall routine for your child and see if you agree or disagree with some of the extracurriculars and hobbies and screen time and friend time that they have on top of school, plus their homework, and see if they can still fit in a 9-hour sleep schedule on top of all of that. And it's probably the first activity I would do as a counselor with some of my clients. I do believe there is a huge importance in making sure that the extracurricular activities that your child is participating in is actually decreasing the levels of stress and not adding additional stress because their schedules are so strained by the time they get home. I also would say to focus on their chronotype, which is, are they a morning person? Are they a daytime person? Are they night owls? Because if they're a morning person, then that means their mind is best suited to do maybe some of their daily tasks in the morning before school. If they're a daytime person, then definitely the second they get home from school is probably the best functioning time for them to do their homework. Or if they're an evening person where they want to get everything out the way and then they can finally relax and zone in on their schoolwork, it's extremely important to get that pressure alleviated before they go to sleep so they can have some sound sleep at the end of the day. My last point is just consistency. Once you have that time management locked down, consistency during the weekdays and on the weekends, where there's a sense of balance between work and school on the weekends as well as work and school on the weekdays, making sure that they're consistently sleeping at the same exact time. I like to recommend 10 p.m. Most of my clients would say, Jeff, that is way too early. But they're waking up at 5, 6 a.m. in the morning. So I believe that's not even enough sleep. So it's really a team effort, between the parent and the child, where they're constantly grading, almost like a report card. I would say every quarter, grade your child on their extracurriculars and their hobbies and how well they're doing in class, and see if there's something that needs to be removed in order for them to be more successful at what they're doing.
Thank you so much. That was super helpful to hear. And especially thinking about revisiting things periodically to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and how important sleep really is. That was one of the big questions that had come about, making sure that, we all know how important it is, but there's all these other demands. So I'm going to put one of our students on the spot here and just ask, how do you manage to get enough sleep?
For me, it's all about time management, as Mr. Ambrose said. So I try to make sure that throughout the day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the end of class, or during a study hall, or even a lunch, I make sure that I'm working toward finishing my homework, or any other thing. Like maybe it's getting a form in for something outside of school, but making sure I'm using each block of free time within my school day. Because for me, my brain's already in work mode. So I can just, using that time and understanding that about myself is something that makes when I get home much easier. And so I have time that I can spend doing things in the community and things for myself, which I really enjoy doing. Regarding specifically for students who carry a lot of classes and they just have so much homework that they don't have enough time, I think it's really important to voice that concern with the teacher specifically from a student perspective, because I remember, a few times it happened to me, and I just would be honest with my teacher if I didn't get something in on time or was afraid I wouldn't. Opening that dialogue with a teacher really was eye-opening for me, because a lot of the teachers were surprised to even know that that was the case. So opening that dialogue with them, I think, would be very important for students who are struggling getting their work on time, or struggling balancing sleep with school.
Thank you, especially for that tip of reaching out to the teachers, because maybe they really don't know what else is going on in other classes. So I think that was pretty useful. So Melanie, this question is for you. Some of us families of color deal with stress from experiencing or worrying about race-related harassment and trauma. One parent's question was about how youth may see negative racial and ethnic stereotypes in social media and the news. So how do we, as parents of color, ensure that our students don't let that get to them, that they still feel special and a sense of belonging in our community?
Thanks. So this question alone can be its own webinar. I'll try to answer it with as much justice as I can give it. It's a challenging question to answer. I'll start by referring back to something Derek had mentioned earlier about social media and the level of consumption that goes on with teenagers. You as parents and caregivers have a right to place some limitations on that consumption, because we know that what teens and adults are seeing in social media and the news can be biased, it can be triggering, it can be so many different things that are not positive. And I'm speaking from personal experience through my life, we as people of color, we don't have to watch the news to know that we have these experiences or people have certain views about us that aren't fair, because it's embedded in our history, right? So my first piece of advice would be to pay attention to what your child may be consuming on the news and social media, and then have an open dialogue about it at home. I think the communication aspect is very important. It's important to know what your child is experiencing in school. So I like the idea of having a weekly meeting or a check-in every night. And it doesn't have to be like an hours on end conversation, but just keep each other in the loop And I think those conversations will provide opportunities to just comfort one another and realize what you need from your community. So if you're noticing certain things happening in school, who can you reach out to try to address some of those issues? And also, if it's something outside of school, where are your kids hanging out, and you know, what else are they experiencing outside of school, and have conversations about that. Another thing I'll add is that I know for a fact, and I am new, but I know for a fact that West Hartford is doing some real important work on, you know, race and equity and inclusion through staff development, as well as incorporating it into the student's day through the community experience every week. So this is a platform that students will have to connect on a variety of issues, including some race and equity based discussions. And these are hard discussions to have, but we can't avoid them. And we saw that kind of play out through, you know, 2020 with the unfortunate killings that happened recently. So I believe West Hartford and everywhere else realized, hey, we can't continue to ignore what's going on in our society. So let's talk about it. And that's the point of having a space like community, so students can have open dialogues about some of these topics that are real life things that are happening in the news and personally. And I would say, as a parent or a caregiver, ask your child about those discussions in community, because a lot can come out of just opening that dialogue. So I would start there, and then, you know, just to continuously love on your child, you know. I mean, and we, people of color, we need it a lot more than, you know, that, not, I don't want to say not a lot more than other people, but we need it emphasized at home and in the community. So just any opportunity you have to, you know, love on your child, and I don't have a better word for it, but just kind of take them and hug them and do whatever you have to do to show them that they're loved and appreciated at home. And I think that in and of itself provides kind of that armor that people of color need as we go throughout our day-to-day lives.
I love that expression, love on your child. I think I'm going to use that more often with my own kids, as much as already they're at the age where they're not taking my hugs. But I wanted to give other panelists an opportunity if they wanted to chime in at this point. Okay. That was my teacher wait time right there, just to make sure that everyone got an opportunity if they wanted to. But we will move on. My next question is for Richard. Given the diversity of family cultures and experiences in our community, what is the range of concerning behaviors and signs that a young person may need therapeutic intervention?
With regards to these behaviors and signs that may warrant a form of therapeutic intervention, one condition that is common among kids and teenagers of various backgrounds, and which often benefits significantly from professional therapeutic intervention, is a condition called major depression. A common warning sign of major depression in kids and teenagers is something called irritability, or an increased tendency towards being annoyed or argumentative or even angry. And so irritability is actually an even more common symptom of major depression in kids and teenagers than depressed mood is, actually. And so when paired together with irritable or depressed mood, major emotional or behavioral changes in things like sleep changes, level of interest in activities, self-esteem, energy, concentration, appetite, or feeling more restless or more slowed down. When these changes are paired together with irritable or depressed mood in teenagers and persist beyond 2 weeks, this can signal major depression. And so at this point, it would be strongly warranted to seek out a mental health professional or even a pediatrician for your child.
Thank you, Richard. The pediatrician is actually somebody who I've consulted with a lot around the mental wellness. And I had not really thought of that until she engaged with me around it for my kids. So I think it's a really good thing to keep in mind that pediatricians can be a first kind of level expert on mental wellness. I'm going to turn now to how our schools are focusing on mental health and wellness. Traditionally, there's been PE and health and wellness classes for the middle and high schools. Last year, a social emotional curriculum with a social justice component, like Melanie was describing, was added to the high school called Community Block and Middle School Advisory. This year, we're hearing that there's more intervention, support staff added to help kids with the transition and ongoing. So Melanie, as the supervisor of the counseling department at the high school level, I know you work with the middle school supervising counselor as well. Can you tell us what ways that middle and high schools have geared up to support students with mental health and wellness for this year?
Sure. So I'll reiterate one of the comments you just made about the additional staff that have been incorporated at both the high school and middle school levels. So at the middle school level, I did consult with Ed Daddio. He supervises the middle school counselors, and he had informed me that there are psychologists as well as added ESSER-funded social emotional learning and clinical interventionists at each middle school. And then the middle school curriculum that encompasses SEL is embedded in the health and wellness curriculum, as Rebecca had mentioned earlier. At the high school level, we have a similar structure. So we have our traditionally staffed counseling department. So we have school counselors, we have social workers, school psychologists, we have pupil service related staff. So, those are your case managers or adults who support students who may have an IEP. And those are the structured staff pieces that we have. But in addition to that, Rebecca mentioned community, as I did earlier, as another way to kind of support students through what we know is a very difficult time in terms of transitioning from a very weird couple years, and something Natalie had mentioned earlier in saying that this is our third year having this kind of uncertainty around school. And I had to think back and say, yeah, it has been 3 school years that we're being impacted by this, which is mind-blowing to even think about. So the structures that we have in place hopefully will give students the support they need. And what we need from you all as parents and community is to let us know, like, how are we doing and what can we do more of? Our support is here, but we want students to be able to advocate for themselves, and we want students to access support. And we know sometimes it can be nerve-wracking to feel like you need to see a counselor or social worker or anything like that. But, we're here to say we're here to help. There's nothing wrong with being anxious about school. Like, everyone's anxious about life in general. So, like, to be put in a situation where you have to, suddenly be able to function in a normal capacity when there's still a pandemic going on, it's just an unrealistic expectation, and we realize that. So that's why we have additional support in place for those very reasons. So don't hesitate to reach out. That's my main thing, is reach out to us. We're here for you, and no one's going to turn you away. And if they do, I need to know about it. So, or we need to know about it so we can address those issues head on.
That's great. Yeah. Engaging with the school, I found, is just really, you have to be the advocate for your kid. You know, that's, the school is full of kids who, you know, who need you to, or as a parent, you need to be sort of on the front line for your kid around that. Can you talk about, you know, Derek was saying how he came in from the remote learning all year, and that social anxiety when you're just all in person and you haven't seen people and you're trying to connect with friends. Is there anything specific in place for the remote learners to transition back? And can you talk kind of about social anxiety in general for kids, maybe special needs, or just, you know, how it's an experience that is kind of universal, but kids deal with it at different degrees?
Yeah, I would say that social anxiety is definitely not a new thing. It's just now at the forefront of everyone's mind, at least in education, because of what online learning has shown us in terms of interacting and socializing for students. We realize it's a very important aspect of the school experience in general. So I would say that the supports that we have in place for students returning from the remote learning experience are really supports we have in place for all students, because all students need to reacclimate, whether they were completely remote or hybrid. Some sense of their normalcy got interrupted, and we need structures in place to support students as they acclimate back to normalcy. And this isn't even normal, right? Like, this is, like we said earlier, there are a lot of aspects of life right now that are still uncertain, so we have to take everything day by day. Some of the specific structures in place to support students, I would say that there's a heightened awareness around building relationships and community in the classroom in general. So, like, yes, students are there to learn, but they must feel comfortable in order to learn. So building capacity in teachers to be able to, yes, teach their content, but also build relationships with students, right? It's super important. I don't think you can learn from someone that you can't connect to in some way, shape, or form. So I believe those are pieces that are becoming more and more important. In terms of more structured things, and speaking specifically to students with special needs, we have our traditional structures in place through the 504 PPT process, which could result in students receiving social work services that are geared towards addressing social anxiety and concerns around that. And the point of those sessions would be to build capacity and skills and techniques to be able to tackle those everyday obstacles that you may face when it comes to socializing and interacting with other people in school. But like I said, even if a student doesn't have, a 504 or an IEP plan, our support services exist to support all students. So if you're a student or a parent who feels like there's a need for additional support in that area, I would say the best thing to do is just to keep those lines of communication open with not only teachers, but definitely your school counselors, because 9 times out of 10, your school counselor can point you in the direction of a specific type of support that you can get. And I also want to draw attention to something that Natalie had said earlier. And that's, the fact that she's in charge of this club that is really geared towards like mental health and wellness. We, like, as adults, we provide support, but also it's empowering to know that students are also taking it upon themselves to lead some of this work as well. And a lot of times students feel more comfortable with people closer to their own age and expressing, you know, their day to day. And I'm just happy to hear that clubs like that exist. And I'm sure there are others that we can connect students to as well. So I just want to commend Natalie on her leadership in that club, and would love to know about other opportunities that exist within our both Hall and Conard High School.
Yeah, and just the idea that clubs just generally will be functioning this year at the middle and high school level, hopefully in a very safe way. But that in itself, I think, as a social connection for kids, just friends, interests, is so huge. And it was really a missing piece for the past year and a half. That's been hard. One more thing, Melanie, I just want to have you answer a question that came up from somebody earlier about when a student or a family is feeling like a teacher or a staff member is just not sensitive to a mental health issue, and kind of where do you go with that? What do you do with that?
Sure. So this is where I would say communication is key. Usually, I would, if I, let's say I got a call that a parent was concerned, and I've had calls that parents were concerned about, a teacher approach or an administrator approach, or, whoever the adult is, and they're coming to me, the counselor, as like, what do I do? My first response to questions or concerns like that is, well, have you had a chance to talk to the teacher or whoever the adult of concern is? Because a lot of times, and it's not anyone's fault, but parents and caregivers, they want to go straight to like someone else besides the person in question to try to solve the problem. And sometimes if that direct communication happens, the problem can get solved faster if you just had that direct communication, because there could be a miscommunication, there can be all sorts of things going on, and the teacher, let's say it's a teacher for this scenario, the teacher is going to know firsthand what's going on in the classroom from their perspective, obviously. And the teacher would be able to provide some context and maybe some potential strategies to try to mitigate the issue at hand. And then at that point, if you talk to the teacher, you try some things and you're not feeling like things are getting any better, at that point, I would say bring in the school counselor at that point, because then the counselor can kind of serve as a mediator between you, your child, and the teacher to figure out what the best way is to move forward. It's important to note that part of the counselor's job, and I used to always kind of joke about this at my previous school, like we're kind of the middleman in all scenarios. So we have to pay attention to the needs of teachers, parents, students, administrators, community, all of that. So we're like that middle ground. And our job is to support everyone and make sure that the outcome of whatever situation is suitable for all parties. But most importantly, like the student has to be at the center of the solution. That's what we have to keep in mind. But my main takeaway from that question, or my main response would be communication, communication, communication. Without communication, nothing gets resolved. Everyone wants to be heard, and we just got to be comfortable with communicating with each other openly and honestly, as hard as that may be.
That's great. That's good. That's good advice in all areas. But yeah, thank you. That's good. That's helpful just to know sort of what to do in that situation. Janelle, I want to turn to you and ask you about your work. You provide counseling through the bridge to individual students and small groups at the schools. Can you tell us a bit about what you do, and what if some students are reluctant or resistant to working with you or just getting help in general? Do you have some advice about that?
Yeah. So we go into the schools during free periods and we provide, depending on the age, either 30-minute to 45-minute sessions. Actually, in October, I'm starting a sisterhood group in one of the middle schools. And my plan is to try and get one for the high school sometime this year, whether it be outside of the school in the office. Some families, you know, they feel like the study hall is super important for their child to complete their homework and they get extra help from their teachers. So if you are able to get transportation to the office after school, we are available at the office after school hours, so it doesn't interfere with any extra help that your student gets at school. If a student is reluctant to come to counseling, we work where the students are at. We have some students who open up first session, we meet them. We have students who take a whole year to open up. And our main goal is to work with their mental health symptoms. But we want to also help them reach not just their mental health goals, but their personal goals as well. So if they're not ready to work on their mental health, we'll work on those personal goals with you. We work alongside with the students to create their treatment goals. You know, like I meet with them, I'm not going to say, I think this is what you need to do, and we're going to work on that. We ask them, what is it that you want to work on? If a student feels like they want to talk to someone, but not in like a therapeutic setting, we do have a mentorship program at the Bridge where they can create a relationship with someone. And if they feel comfortable in that relationship, and that mentor also stays in contact with the parents to give them updates. And if they both think that the student would benefit from counseling, then they might refer them to the counseling center as well. So we also have another side of the Bridge where we have MFTs that provide family therapy. So if we meet with a student and the family is like, you know, I think we would benefit as a family to get therapy, we can provide individual therapy for the student, and then the family can come up to the clinic side and work as a family together with another clinician doing family work as well.
So that's, the Bridge is very comprehensive in terms of the services. How do you get matched up with a student at school? Where does that start?
So if a parent sees that their student is struggling, they would reach out to the counselor or school social worker. And from there, they actually reach out, they fill out a referral form, they send it to the Bridge, and we view what the needs are for the student and we match them with the appropriate therapist. And then, so if the child is assigned to me, I would get the referral form, contact the family, give them consent forms, explain what we do. And then from there, we reach out to the school, figure out the schedule of what time works best for the student, and then start going in to the school and providing services. Last year during COVID, we weren't able to go into the building, so we did virtual sessions. This year, we are able to go into the buildings, and you know, if we have like a snow day or something and we're scheduled to meet each other, if the student wants to, we can have a virtual session and we won't have to miss any sessions, and we can continue going as normal.
Do you find virtual sessions to be productive with young people?
I think it's productive for some students. I think, in my opinion, if it's a child, like an elementary student, it's a little bit harder. But most students who are like middle school or high school, I do find it productive as long as the child has a quiet area, you know, so we can keep confidentiality and has a space where they can actually have a session.
Great. Thank you, Janelle. I wanted to turn to Rosina and ask you a question. Rosina, could you talk about the disparities in access for mental health and wellness for some families, and what ways the schools are able to be supportive in bridging these gaps?
Sure, that's a great question, Rebecca, and it is one of great concern for many. But I think in order to talk about disparities in access to mental health supports and resources, I want to go back to something that Janelle referenced earlier, and that is negative stigma. Because we really have to first address any notion around seeking and receiving mental health services and supports as being taboo. So negative stigma is a common barrier that we've identified among social economic challenges and awareness and availability to mental health resources and supports. So here in West Hartford, we are very fortunate to have a strong circle of care in our community. The panelists and organizers for this webinar are a great example of that. We are better able to identify, provide, and or connect students and families to services and resources because of our district's community partnerships, our ongoing professional trainings to ensure that we stay highly skilled and current about research-based interventions. We have increased our investment in clinical support, as Melanie referenced. And only in recent times are we starting to see more state and federal funding allocated for families who face social economic hardships in accessing services. And fortunately, as you see tonight, we're also seeing a growing awareness of and access for our communities of color in particular, and more adolescent clinicians that are BIPOC providers than we have seen in even like a year ago. So essentially, raising awareness is one way in which we've sought as a school district to address access and utilization of mental health services and supports. We talked a little bit earlier about the middle and high schools, during the morning advisory and community block, as well as during summer school. In fact, we start by implementing a responsive classroom model in which it really allows for a predictable time for students and educators to build community in the midst of uncertainty and to take an emotional, temperature check of our students and ourselves as adults. So during this time, like during the early part of our social emotional learning curriculum, which is paired with the social justice topics that Melanie highlighted earlier, we establish norms and conditions and routines for students to build self-awareness and a sense of community. For them to be able to pause and identify and name their feelings and their hopes and their fears, whether privately or openly, is another vehicle for them. It is also a time for our students to acquire important information about school-based resources available to them, as well as how to access them and when to access them. And so the message to our students is that at any given time, any of us can experience stress or worry or angst or fear or doubt or isolation, but you never have to cope alone. And their safety and well-being remains our number one priority. And we're trying to model that in deed and in action, whether they need someone to listen to or they need some more intensive support for themselves or they have concerns about a peer. So that it is our goal to make sure that all students have a common understanding of where to go, why those supports exist, and most of all, making them easily accessible for students and their families. There are many times throughout the year, not just in community and morning advisory and morning meeting at the elementary level, but there are many times throughout the year in the building that students receive these reminders and reinforcements, like through health and wellness classes, through freshman seminar, junior planning, even in the college planning conversation, college and careers one-on-one meetings with their school counselors during assemblies like the Chris Heron project, and just many other intentional checkpoints and opportunities. And then second, family school partnership, just like the one that brought us together here this evening, that's another way that we, along with parents and caregivers, support students and break down those barriers and identify locating and accessing mental health resources, and to really address those barriers in ways that, regardless of your income, the color of your skin, or your zip code, making sure that everybody has access, but having access through awareness too. And I do want to emphasize just the increase in services this year and the supports, the human capital that Melanie referenced to. Our staffing includes additional behavior and mental health social workers, a trauma interventionist at the high school. We're currently recruiting a family services social worker out of my office, the Office of Equity Advancement, as a liaison between our school clinicians and our community partners. We've also increased our halftime ESOL outreach coordinator who serves English speakers of other languages to a full-time position, and that's also shared with the Office of Equity Advancement. And she is a family therapist, an MFT is referenced earlier. She starts this week, and she's going to help us with outreach and to ensure that we are really reaching students and families who are traditionally underserved, underrepresented in these conversations. And so, you know, these conversations and shared resources through multiple communication channels are ways that we help to address those disparities, raising awareness and providing access.
Thank you, Rosina. It was really so great to hear about all that our schools are doing to support our own children's mental health and wellness, and just talking about the increase in services and all, even the reminders to the students, like just, I think matters in taking away the stigma and knowing that there are things available for them and accessible, and for them to know that, I think is hugely important and hopefully impactful. You know, I think for some families though, it's still difficult to consider therapy or prioritize mental wellness because of their maybe cultural upbringing or background, or continued stigmas around mental health. So I wanted to ask you, Richard, what would you say to these families about the reluctance around therapeutic intervention for their child?
Thank you. It basically goes without saying that parents and caregivers love their kids. Parents and caregivers want the best for their children, regardless of whether or not they initially are considering therapeutic intervention. And my advice to these families would be to try to understand mental health conditions as like any bodily condition, like a skin infection or a broken bone, for example. Mental health conditions have a biological basis and are often very treatable, just like many other bodily conditions are. It can be daunting to try to bring your child to a psychiatrist or a therapist, given the stigma that does exist in many cultures surrounding such treatments. But ultimately, seeking care, seeking help for your child for mental health symptoms is a sign of your caring and love towards your child.
Thank you. I know how important you know, these preventative measures are, and I think as people become more aware of what we can do to sort of preserve and take care of our own mental health and wellness, I think would be really helpful. Jeffrey, when a family is deciding if a therapist would be helpful, how do they reach out? And since a lot of therapists actually, for many of us who have tried, don't really have room for new patients right now, what advice do you have for parents and what they can do?
Yeah. So the hardest part about finding therapy is finding a therapist that will accept you, that will accept your age, that will accept your mental health struggles, that will accept your schedule, that will accept your insurance. And once you get past that part, then they're going to give you a whole bunch of documentation that you have to fill out for your intake that needs to be filled out before you actually see them. Then when you get past that part, and you're finally in the office and you sit down and you have the courage to finally meet this stranger, you realize that this therapist might not be the perfect fit for you. I don't want you to give up. I want you to be honest with that therapist and let them know, I think I might need another therapist. And can I ask you to help me find the correct one? And this is, I think, the part that many people struggle with when it comes to mental health. It's like, it didn't work for me. I can't do it anymore. I give up. I'm not going to try this again. And I'm saying to most clients out there, there is a therapist for everyone. You just have to do the additional legwork to find the right one for you. So what is that legwork? Well, due to the COVID pandemic, if I'm being honest with you, most of my colleagues, including our practice at Courage Counseling, we're receiving 2 to 5 referrals a day. We're probably receiving 20 referrals in a week. And what we need to do typically is we try and prioritize those who are extremely urgent, or those who are in desperation for a therapist, or those who are just extremely consistent. I have potential clients out there that are emailing, calling, even like texting our social groups, our website every day until they get one of those final slots and openings. So I always say, if you find the right therapist, do your research, go on Psychology Today, go on Google, make sure you see the website, make sure you read the bios, make sure that they accept your insurance, make sure that, you feel like this person is a good fit for you before you go through this intense intake cycle just to even get your first appointment. I would say the best form of referral is sometimes through a third-party agency. So if you work and you have an employee assistant program, or if you call your insurance company and say, hey, I really need a counselor, can you guys help me find someone in the area? Or if you had a recent hospitalization, they can sometimes make direct referrals to certain therapists. Or if you had a higher level of care, like an ICAPS or an IOP type of a program, and they're looking to put you in an outpatient type of setting, they can make that direct referral for you. Schools are another wonderful way to have a direct referral to a particular therapist because they already have established relationships. Psychiatrists, your pediatrician, those are the key people that you would want to contact first if you're looking for a therapist in your area. But I would say the best referral is ones that come directly from clients that are already seeing me. So if I have a client that's already seeing me and they have a friend, or they have a parent, or they have someone that's going through something, that client knows my schedule, knows my clinical modalities, knows my approach, and would be able to tell me a little bit about that person. And if I feel like it's a great fit because it's coming from my client, I'm going to prioritize that particular patient. The other big thing is knowing the seasons. So with intakes, there's a high influx in September. Reason being because school just started and everyone's looking for a therapist around this time. It starts to dwindle down towards the winter, and then it picks back up in the spring because the spring, the kids are stressed and overwhelmed with schools and their schedules, and that's when that depression and anxiety starts to creep in. So we get another high influx in the spring. And then guess what happens in the summer? Not many referrals in the summer. So the best time to get a therapist, if you're lucky, is in the winter months and in the summer months. And then you stick with that therapist into the fall and into the spring until you feel like your mental health needs has been satisfied through counseling. The other thing I would say is, I know parents would like to make the calls and the referrals for their children, but trust me when I say, when I hear a voicemail that's coming directly from a child, their mental health needs, I'm going to prioritize that child, because now I know that child is invested in their mental health and they're looking forward to getting additional services. And it's just a bigger impact to me when I'm hearing it directly from a child. The other thing I would say, if you see that there's a hierarchy, a clinical director, a CEO, don't be afraid to contact the CEO or the clinical director, because when someone emails me or texts me or calls me directly, then I go in and contact my administrative staff and my intake coordinator, and I let them know, did you reach out to this particular client? Because this particular client is showing me that they're going to go above and beyond to get the services that they need. So be consistent. Don't give up on us. There's a therapist out there for each and every one of you. Just have some patience and just follow all the rules. And I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful, successful treatment in all of it.
Thank you for all that advice. I think that's really super helpful to hear. You know, it's tough because as some of us think about like how hard it is to even get to the point of like admitting, okay, or thinking we need therapeutic intervention, and then to think about all these other things that we might have to go through in addition, but just how it is still possible and well worth it and worthwhile is very helpful. So I think in our follow-up email, which we'll be sending after this webinar, we will include lists of BIPOC and AAPI counselors, as well as resources for LGBTQ+ adolescents.
Okay, so it's so helpful to have that advice, to know where to turn when things get to the point where intervention is needed. And sometimes things can get ramped up to even a crisis situation. And just to spend a moment talking about that, because some of us may have gone through that, it's helpful to kind of explain what to do. If someone is in physical danger, we know to call 911, to go to the emergency room. There's also, for mental health crisis situations, 211 is a service. And Jeffrey, you've been on the other side of the 211 call to provide services. Can you just explain what that is? You know, I know there's guidance through intervention, and just give us a brief kind of understanding of what to do. Why call 211?
Yes. In my earlier years as a clinician, I had the opportunity to work for Wheeler Clinic EMPS 211, which is just basically a mobile crisis unit that you could call 24/7. And what you would do is you would just explain the concern that you have with your child. It could be that the child is irate, that the child is displaying suicidal ideations, that the child is going through a depressive episode. And what that clinician will do is will try to speak to the child to de-escalate the situation over the phone. And if that's not successful, then what we would do is we would do a crisis assessment in the home. I know they had slight rules because of COVID where they were doing telehealth sessions, but I believe now that they're back to doing in-home psychiatric assessments for crisis situations. What the 201 person would do then, once they're in the home, they would pretty much do all the assessment paperwork, which is about 90 minutes or so. And then they would sit with the child to make sure that that child has de-escalated entirely and that they are okay and safe to be at the house. If it is determined that that child is unsafe, then the EMPS mobile crisis clinician will then make the direct referral to either call 911 or to do a hospitalization to make sure that that child stays safe within the 24 hours. Now, what's great about EMPS and what a lot of people don't know is 211 is not just a one-time thing. You'll be assigned an immediate clinician right after for that month to help establish the wraparound services that your student will need or your child will need, whether it's an outpatient therapist, whether it's a psychiatrist for some medication, whether it's a clinician in a mental health private practice, or whether it's additional resources at school to help that client get to where they need to be mentally, and to ensure their safety. So 211 is a big step to suicide prevention. It's probably one of the first steps you should take. They have a huge initiative behind that. And if you're out of the state, there's this thing called 711, which is the national version of 211. So 211 is for Connecticut, but 711 is the national. So if you are unable to get through somebody on 211, then you would be able to call the national hotline at 711. It's completely confidential, so you can share whatever you need. There is chat services available, so if you don't feel comfortable talking on the phone, you could chat with someone online. I believe it's like Tuesday to Friday, 8 to 2, if you just go on their website. And then the other thing that people don't know is, let's say a student is struggling with like homelessness or housing issues. 211 would be able to provide additional resources and services for that. Or if DCF voluntary services need to be involved, 211 would also be able to provide voluntary services for that family to help them with some DCF's concerns that may be involved in that crisis assessment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. That's really helpful to know about that service. And, you know, the goal is for people not to get into the crisis situation, right? I mean, we've talked tonight all about sort of working backwards, like having a therapist, talking to somebody, taking care of yourself around wellness and prevention to start with. And so kind of walking back to that place, if we could kind of end tonight, it would be great just to kind of go back to the wellness and prevention and think about Natalie and Derek. It would be wonderful to hear from you about what advice that you have to give younger students about self-care for mental wellness. What would you say?
So I think it's really important to start those healthy habits and coping skills really young, because by the time you get to further on in your life, whether it be high school, college, etc., you already have a foundation of skills and methods you can deal with any stressor. And so one thing for me, I love taking a walk. You know, it can be 2 minutes, it can be 10 minutes, it can be as long as you need. Just being able to get outside and literally move forward and take a breath is something that, for me, that's something I love doing. And it's been a great way to take a step back from whatever it is that's either causing me stress, or maybe I just need a break. And then I also think that in a more general sense, I think that it's really important for students to work on identifying what they're feeling and how they're feeling, as hokey as it may seem, because I know sometimes students or people around me that are of my age or a little younger sometimes are like, feelings like, I know what I'm feeling, I'm fine. But really understanding the root cause of what you're feeling, how it's impacting your current situation and how it's going to impact your future actions is something really important. So for any parents watching, I think it's really important for, if you have a younger student, those concepts are kind of abstract for them to just apply in their own life. So having someone at home to help implement check-ins, as a lot of people have said earlier, I think those are really great ways to make sure that the mental well-being stays in the forefront of students and kids' minds and their focus.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Derek, your turn.
To kind of generalize what Natalie said for not just younger students, but for anybody, like high schoolers, college students, even adults. I think definitely what she said, taking a walk definitely helps. That's something that really helped me to get in the rhythm of things. I would recommend about like at least 20 minutes or 10, depending on your age. And then another thing that you can do is when you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling down on yourself, is to like take a step back and like kind of remind yourself what's good about you. Like, you are strong, you are confident, you are funny, you have a lot of good personal traits that you do. No matter who you are, what you do, and what how you present yourself. And then the big thing is, like, this is definitely going to like absolutely everybody, in high school students as well, is to love each other. Because a lot of people really, you may like walk in the hallways and see someone you may walk in the hallways and see a student or somebody that's just like grumpy all the time. And you don't know what they're going through at home. You don't know if they really have like a caretaker or a caregiver that, shows them love or that shows them affection and shows them that they matter. And if you're just that person that just, kind of gives them a slight smile at the very least, you're taking your time to make them know that they are acknowledged and that they are, that they matter. Like just a small smile really helps. And also love yourself. And like I said, just remind yourself what makes you you, and remind yourself that you are important and that you do matter, because we all do. And it's not just one of us, it's not just 10 of us or a million of us, it's everybody who's living on this earth. So I think love is definitely a big thing that we have to have for ourselves and the people around us.
Thank you so much for that advice. I love that advice, not just for younger students, which I'm going to play for my own younger students, but just for all of us. I think it was really great to listen to both you and Natalie. Well, I'm looking at Jared right now. Just talk about, all these amazing things that I don't believe I understood or really knew at your age. So I really appreciated hearing it from you, from both of you as well. So we are so grateful that everyone that chose to attend or sign up and be with us this evening. We're going to paste a feedback survey in the chat. And while people are taking a look at that, I also wanted to throw it out to any of our other panelists. Do you have one parting tip or suggestion that hasn't come up to help keep our focus on mental health and wellness? So just chime in when you have that golden nugget for us.
Gigi, I have something. We've been talking about students because they're our North Star, and our parents because, they are first educators for our students, and they're our children's first responders. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention educator mental wellness. Self-care is important for students and parents and caregivers, but it's equally important for educators. Parents entrust the care of their precious children with. So we will be exploring contracted services as a district to support the mental health and wellness of our dedicated staff, because essentially a healthy and committed staff is what all students deserve.
That's wonderful to hear, Rosina. We have to all take care of ourselves and each other. I would just offer the sensory experiences as a way for self-care. Janelle mentioned, I think, things like bath salts and scented candles, I think, when she started out so beautifully talking about self-care. And I would add visual experiences, having, natural light, looking out a window, listening to your favorite music that's upbeat, and also a good cry.
I would like to add that it's a team collaborative effort, and just the fact that all of us came together tonight to talk about the mental health issues shows students that, they have people that genuinely care. And I would definitely, try to encourage students to find a mentor or find someone that, you really could establish a strong connection with, because at that point, that to me is a counseling therapeutic relationship. I always say that the best counselors, though, are the ones that are living at home. Making sure that you're having deeper conversation with your children, more than just how was school, really what we should be asking is, son, daughter, can I make your day a little bit better? Or is there anything on your mind that you would like to discuss with me? And I think knowing that and going that extra mile, that parent will know how to tap into other resources to support their child. So I just want to make sure that everyone is reminded that it is a team collaborative type of effort, and the more resources we have around a student, the more successful they'll be.
Any other panelists want to weigh in before we wrap up? about just a tip or parting suggestion?
I can chime in as well. Just with regards to the amount of time that one can spend as a caregiver to improve or promote one's own wellness. So for caregivers and parents, it can be highly beneficial to take at least 20 minutes a day just to yourself. By that, I mean doing things for at least 20 minutes a day that are meaningful and fun to you, whether that's like working out or going on a walk outside or watching an episode of your favorite TV show. Talking with other adults is actually also a really high yield form of like a quick break from caregiving for a day. And basically by taking time each day to benefit your own wellness as a caregiver, you can care even better for your children's mental wellness as well. So just wanted to part that to the audience.
I think another quick thing too is for students of any age, reach out to a trusted adult when you feel as if it's strongly needed. When you are going through something, when you are just trying to even with a small question, or even I know there was a Q&A question in the chat when you feel like you're very stressed with the amount of work that you're getting. From personal experience at Hall, a lot of the teachers there are extremely lenient with you. And they really do understand if you are having a lot on your plate. And just do not be afraid to communicate and reach out when you are having just a simple issue with a question or anything in class, or if you're at home and you're just having a small little, panic. Reach out to your teachers. They are completely understanding, whether it's email or whether you just come right up to them, like when the bell rings to end class, like just ask questions. Communication is very key. And if you are able to, communicate that, that will really get you far, not only in high school, but really in life. So communicate when you are having a problem or you just need a simple lift up, because the people around you will definitely feel free to help you.
Anyone else?
Just wanted to share, I shared with Rebecca earlier, with all this uncertainty that we've been talking about, I found an article that talked about one upside to the feeling of uncertainty is that it really leads us to value and savor the like small things or like the little things that we're grateful for. So even like at the beginning of the pandemic, I can already think back to like just being so grateful that, my kids were healthy or that we still, had each other at home. So just like taking a moment to like, as cheesy as this, to stop and smell the roses, even though we have like all this around us that we are not sure of what's going to happen.
Thank you, Gigi. That's a great place to close. So we have come to the end of our time tonight, but this is not the last of our efforts to keep our focus on mental health and ongoing conversations. I personally and professionally have learned so much this evening, and I hope that there were some key takeaways for all of our guest audience members and our guest panel members. I really appreciate the respectful amount of time allotted for this, because these are conversations that should never be rushed. So as we wrap up, I do want to make a few acknowledgements on behalf of the West Hartford Public Schools and the community of concern. Thank you to our esteemed panelists for an enlightening and educational conversation. A very special thanks to our student speakers, Derek and Natalie, for your wisdom and your brave voices. I think you may have found your calling. We are all so proud of both of you and grateful for your student leadership too in our community. Thank you to WHC Interactive, Jen, for creating this virtual space for this important discussion, and a warm gratitude extended to our moderators and organizers, Rebecca and Gigi, and the community of concern. Thank you to for all of your community advocacy and leadership in this. And finally, thank you to everyone who tuned in live or via replay for centering your energy on the well-being of our young people, for helping to keep our focus on mental health, and for expanding our community circle of care. So wrapping our children up in your love, or as Melanie said earlier, loving on our children. Thank you for that. Please look for a compendium of relevant resources in a follow-up email, as Gigi indicated, and we will also post this webinar as well as those resources on our district website. So please take good care, everyone, and good night.